Chasing Amy. What? What did you say? You're chasing Amy.
What do you look so shocked for, man? Fat bastard does this all the time. He thinks just because he don't say anything, it'll have some huge impact when he does open his fucking
Jesus
mouth?
Christ, why don't you shut up?
Hello and welcome to episode 381 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now joining me on today's episode is a guest that I've wanted for over 5 years. Anyone that knows me will know my love for Kevin Smith. He's the actual reason I started podcasting. I got to launch Mark and Me with him. I'm an absolutely huge fan of his films. And you will know by the guests that I've had from the View Askewniverse on Mark and Me just how much I adore him. I've had Jason Mewes, Brian O'Halloran, Jeff Anderson, Ethan Suplee, Marilyn Gigliotti, Trevor Furman, Scott Mosier, but there was always one name I wanted from my favourite Kevin Smith film, and I truly never knew if I could pull this one off. But on today's episode, I finally get to say I'm joined by Joey Lauren Adams. Chasing Amy is in my top 5 films of all time. I have an absolute unhealthy obsession with this movie. I think it's a perfect script, perfect story, and just an incredible performance from Joey Lauren Adams. And I'm still pinching myself today knowing that she's on the Mark and Me podcast. But in true typical Mark and Me fashion, I always like to use the intro just to basically touch base and talk about my last episode. On episode 380, I was joined by Kid Bookie. I just want to say now a massive thank you to everyone that took the time to listen. The numbers were huge. Thanks to Kid Bookie himself for sharing the episode. And again, go and check out his album. It's unbelievable. But today, it's all about Joey Lauren Adams. And I think the best thing to do now is to get straight to it. So here's me and Joey talking all things film. So Joey, thank you for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Joey, what I love to do with all guests that come on, I've never changed the first question, is take it right back to the start. And what I'm really intrigued by is when you were a kid, can you remember that first film you saw, maybe with your family or someone gave you, or you saved up your pocket money, but that first film you remember seeing that made you fall in love with film?
That's a really tough one. There's kind of a few for different reasons. But Fame, the movie Fame, but that was awesome because like I grew up in Arkansas going to public school, and like our drama department, we were doing like Little Abner as our high school musical. And so seeing an environment like that, but also realizing that film can show you an environment like that you just didn't know existed, because this was obviously before like the World Wide Web, where you can find anything and videos of anything. It's just like, wow, that's a world I want to be a part of, but also like film can show you this world. And then I think The Pope of Greenwich Village, Eric Roberts' performance in that, for some reason it just moved me, and it was a film because there was like Flashdance, like these kind of movies, but there's just all very kind of like 9.5 Weeks. I the movies of that time, but it was just always like the females were so sexualized, and like just seeing a movie where they were more characters. Like I was like, oh, that's a character actor. Other than
Yeah.
like, I always watch their films, black and white. Like I loved those movies, but it seemed so distant. You know, it didn't, it's like, that's not really a movie. And then for some reason, I don't know, The Pope of Greenwich Village, it was just like New York and a time, and his performance just kind of, it was like, that's acting. Like, that's a performance.
Did you then have that kind of thought that maybe it was reality, or was it a dream that you could one day be an actor yourself, or was it just you just loved film at that age and just wanted to experience life, or did you actually kind of think, I've got an itch, I would love to actually maybe do this one day?
Yeah, I had an itch very, very early on, because I would like our church, we would, when we were in Sunday school, we would put on little plays for the, you know, the big church. Um, and I remember I played like Mary Magdalene, like always from the beginning, cast as like the hooker with a heart of gold. But just performing in front of an audience at such a young age, it's just like I really like this. But I thought like I had a poster of New York on my wall. I thought again, like I didn't know if I wanted to do like Broadway, but I couldn't sing. So that was kind of a problem. But I always thought younger, I thought I would go to New York, and that's probably because of fame.
Yeah.
But I knew I wanted to be in the entertainment business.
Did you, and I know it's a tough one, but when I was a kid, I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be like Kurt Cobain or be a singer of a band. When I turned around to my parents and said, one day I want to do that, they kind of laughed at me and said, you need to get a real job. Like that's funny that you want to do that. But I wondered if you had a family that were like, okay, yeah, you go out there and you become an actor, or they were like, nah, this isn't going to happen.
Like my mom, there was a lot going on. Like my mom and dad were separating, and like my brother was kind of addicted to drugs, and my sister was off at college. And so there was a lot going on in everyone's lives. But I think that like my mom knew, she knew early on that I wasn't going to stay in Arkansas and just like get married and have kids or be a dental hygienist. Or she knew, and in high school, I sort of started, I think, down a somewhat destructive path, but she knew I was just bored. And so she kind of got all the paperwork and was like, hey, what if you were an exchange student to Australia? And so I was like, oh my God, yes, I would love to do that. You know, and at 17, just flew by myself to Australia
That's
and was an
insane.
exchange student.
Wow.
Yeah, and that she would let me do that, but also knew, she just knew me. She just knew I needed something more than little Abner at my high school. And in Australia, they do, I think you only go to 11th and 12th if you are going on to college. So it was very college-esque, and then it was open campus, and you had, you know, English on Tuesday and Thursdays. And then the playwrights that we were studying were more English playwrights and like legit playwrights. And I took photography, and it was just a really great experience. And then I came back to Arkansas and went back to high school, and it really was kind of a step backwards, um, and really difficult for me. And I almost like quit and got my GED. Um, but then my brother was in a really bad car accident. I was like on the work study program, so I could be with him in the hospital. So in high school, like my senior year, I got out at noon.
Yeah.
And so my mom just kind of was like, look, try a year of college where she had gone, my dad had gone, and my sister was at. She's like, if you don't like it, I'll be behind you kind of morally in whatever you want to do. So I did that knowing, of course, I wasn't going to like it. Came back, 3 jobs, and just saved my money and was like, I'm going to go try. But I had a backup plan. I was going to be a jewelry designer if acting didn't work out. And I was going to go to the Gemological Institute in Santa Monica. So
Were
that
you,
was sort of
yeah,
like,
that's good to have a plan B, but were you kind of always like, I don't want a plan B, like I'm gonna go all out, like I am going there for
yeah.
a reason, I'm gonna be an actor.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that it helped. Mary Steenburgen is from my hometown, which is such a small town. And like my grandfather taught her Sunday school. And so my mom was, like we kind of knew her. And I used to sit in front of her house and kind of like, if she can do it, then I can do it. And
Yeah.
had she not been funny, I don't know if I'd have had the guts to try. But having someone like that who's like, she grew up in a house just like mine. My dad taught her, my granddad taught her Chinese, like a normal person can go and do this.
Yeah. Which is good because then you can believe and it doesn't have to be just a dream, does it? It can become reality.
Exactly. Exactly.
One
Yeah.
of the first performances I saw, it was probably at college, was Dazed and Confused, and I genuinely look at that film still as like a cult classic now. The soundtrack, every acting performance in it, it just feels like one of those staples in the industry where I'll always go back to stuff like 10 Things I Hate About You, that Clerks, all these certain films where they just seem timeless. And I wondered what it was like as one of your first major performances that got you really noticed, being involved with such a great filmmaker and such a great team of people. Because that film, even today, stands up. I watch it and still feel like it was only made last week.
I know. It really does. I just feel like extremely, extremely fortunate. It was my first movie um and Rick was just so like he sent us all a letter a few weeks before shoot for we all were going to Austin to shoot. And he said, if you don't like your character, change it. Just know it when you get to Austin.
Oh, wow.
And he sent us like 2 cassette tapes with 70s music. Because again, it was like you couldn't kind of just go and Google 70s music or 70s culture or, any like, how would you research that role without the computer like that time? Um, but I had been like a big fan of like 70s films anyway. And then growing up in Arkansas, like that's exactly how I grew up. Like we had a street that we cruised. We had our like video arcade that we hung out at, and we'd have keg parties in the woods. Like that was my teenage years. But he was just so incredible and just so collaborative, I guess. But also like he had his vision, but he would just like it let us write scenes. Like Parker and I were writing scenes nonstop. And if he could and had time, he would shoot them. Half my scenes in that movie are things that I wrote or came up with. I remember when we were shooting the parking lot scene, hazing all the freshmen.
Yeah.
I feel like we shot one day and then it was going to be like a week later or a few days later, we were coming back to shoot the second part. And he came up to me at the end of the first day and was like, hey, I'm going to do something with just you when we come back. So think of something. And that he was just like, really? You want me to write something? And he said, yeah. And so then the next day that we were shooting that, and it was just like hot and asphalt parking lot in Austin in the summer, and we were behind, we finished like what had been slated to shoot would have been scheduled, and they started to call wrap, and Rick said, no, I want to do something with Joey, and the producers were not happy about it at all. And he looked to me and he said, did you come up with something? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, what do you need? And I was like, give me 3 girls. They got those. He's like, where do you want the camera? I was like, here, and then he said, okay. And he didn't even ask me what I had written, what I was going to do. And we rolled and I did the fry like bacon thing. We did one more take and he said, cut. And he looked at the producers and he said, no.
How
And it ended up
refreshing
in the
is that to
movie.
hear? That's so good. Like
Yeah. It
the
was,
freedom.
yeah. Yeah. It was really amazing. It was really special, honestly. And I think that, it gave so many of us like a confidence that I don't know that we would have, had so early on in our careers had we not been that lucky. I think that the casting director, I think he played a big part because it was Don Phillips who
Yeah.
cast Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Dog Day Afternoon. And he's just a fantastic casting director. And he really, I think, had a heavy hand in casting that film. And I think Rick then trusted Don, trusted the actors that they had hired together. And
Yeah.
so when we got there, I think that's why he started with the confidence in us. Or maybe that's his philosophy and way of doing is, get the actor, give them confidence. But then it was just like, there was going to be a montage of us driving around, and Park and I wrote a scene. And, when we were shooting, we were like, Rick, is there sound? And he's like, we'll get sound. What, okay, let's shoot something. And that's the scene where it's like, I'm not mad. Like Park and I wrote that.
It's amazing. I love
In the lobby.
you must have felt really cherished on set and really appreciated because he had so much trust in you, to turn around to the studio or the producers and be like, well, let's just give her the chance to give her this idea. It's so nice to hear. You'd have felt really important and respected and be like, give me a chance, let's see how it goes.
Yes, it was very much that, and it was very much a set without like misogyny or any of that kind of Me Too stuff, because Rick is just very kind of like, like respects women and treats us all as if we're very intelligent, smart women. He treated all of us that way, and just a really cool guy. So it never felt, about my costume or my wardrobe or my looks, or it just felt very much about like where I'm playing a character. He was great. He was amazing. And then it was like the next film that I went to do, like I didn't even meet the director. Like we had 3 weeks of rehearsal in
Yeah.
Austin before we even started shooting. And then also watching Rick, like he taught me a lot as a director, um, of being able, he just has such a like he's so calm, he rarely gets upset. And he just kind of is such a great observer, and just observing the dynamics of all of us on set. He started kind of like the Matthew McConaughey, that host speech at the football field,
Yeah.
the famous one, like that was originally another character's, but he kind of made this switch and gave it to Matthew,
A
knowing
genius
that's who
decision.
needed. Yes, yes.
I can't not sit here and talk about Chase and Amy. It's in my top 5 films of all time. Kevin is the
One last
reason.
thing, I'm
It's
going in September they're doing the 30-year reunion of Days.
yeah,
And so I went to the 10, the 20, now I'm going to the 30. But
that's
what you were
awesome.
saying is yes, that film holds up. So I just
Yeah,
wanted to get that in.
no, of course. And Kevin is the reason I do podcasting, and he was my first ever guest. And I've been lucky enough to interview most of the people now. There's a couple left, but I've had such an influence with the View Askewniverse and Chase and Amy. The dynamic and the chemistry of you and Ben Affleck and Jason Lee is genuinely the top 5 film of all time for me. I think you made my heart wrench. I was the first film I really felt emotion, and I just wondered what it was like at the time of filming that, because obviously it's with hindsight you can look back, but did you ever expect it to be such a cult film where people recognize you and for a lifetime of the poster
No,
itself with you on and everything, it really is a huge part of any filmmaker or any film fan's life is your performance in that, because it really is an absolute masterpiece.
thank you. Thank you so much. It's really sweet of you to say. I think that like because like Dazed and Confused, I remember like there was so much hype around that film, and it ended up tanking at the box office. Like it was only years later that it really kind of caught
Yeah.
on and people started seeing it. And then I went to do Mallrats, and also on Dazed and Confused. I don't know if you're aware, but like Marissa Ribisi, who was in it,
Yeah.
was not 18, and she was dating Jason Lee. And so Jason Lee was there as her guardian while we were shooting Dazed and Confused. And so he was just hanging out with us, and he was so great and so funny. And that's like the casting director, Don Phillips, and the producers, Jim and Sean, I want to say, they produced Mallrats. And
Yeah.
so that's how Jason kind of ended up in Mallrats. So I already knew Jason, had spent quite a bit of time with him and Ben on Dazed and Confused. So when we went and did Mallrats, there was a familiarity. We just kind of
Yeah.
knew each other. But then I remember Kevin was driving me to the airport when I wrapped, because we just kind of really hit it off. Um, just a great kind of like rapport because I came into that like I won't tell the whole story, but it was really kind of like not a pleasant way in which I finally ended up getting that role. Like had it, it was taken away. They gave it to Parker, who was like my best friend at the time, and then she couldn't do it. And it was just all this kind of bullshit. So when I did finally get to set, I kind of had an attitude, I think. And then also Kevin told me that the producer Jim had told him we were dating, which we weren't. So then it was like, oh great, now this like Kevin thinks I like slept with this producer to get
Oh
here. And
God.
I was just kind of like just like fuck all this, really. And
Yeah.
so Kevin has this kind of fun, obviously he's very funny, but I was just kind of like just giving him shit back.
Yeah.
Like taking even one step further, which I think then developed very quickly into like this really fun banter that we had with each other. And I really, really just enjoyed it so much and enjoyed Kevin and was the highlight of that film and working like it changed my, obviously my experience on it because he was just so fun. But he drove me to the airport and I had just gotten offered Biodome and he was like, you can't do Biodome. Mallrats is going to come out. It's going to be a huge success. You don't want Biodome and then of course like Mallrats tanked at the box office. And then, but the Pauly Shore film was supposed to be the huge Pauly Shore and it ended up being his lowest grossing film. And so I just think with Chasing Aim, like it just got to the point where like honestly, that wasn't on my mind of like, I want to do something iconic and special. It was
Yeah.
just like I knew Kevin. I didn't care what it did at the box office. I didn't have I'd been let down so many times that it was like I stopped having expectations for that. And it was like just be in the moment. The script is amazing, the part is amazing. He fought like I think Harvey wanted like Drew Barrymore, Jon Stewart, and one of the friends character actors. Do you
Yeah.
know like so we went into it feeling not wanted anyway, except by Kevin, of course. And so there was just something kind of to prove there. Like I was just focused on proving Harvey wrong, basically, and doing a good job for Kevin.
I think it worked because the performance stands the test of time and genuinely pulls my heartstrings. And especially, I know you're always going to hear this, but the scene in the car with the rain, your performance in that should have got an Oscar. Like, it's phenomenal. Like, I genuinely watch it again and again, and it's the reason I love film, and it's stuck with me forever. And I just think it's Kevin's best ever work. I don't think he'll ever get anywhere near it again.
Yeah, I wonder, and like, this is nothing I wouldn't say to Kevin. I see him quite often, but I really love when he is so funny, he's so great with comedy, but when he puts his heart into it as well, which
Yeah,
I think he rarely does, like really puts is vulnerable in that way. Like
yeah,
he something really special. I'm very curious about, and we've talked about this, like he has a film coming out called 430
yeah,
that he said is sweet. But I don't know if like Kevin and I were dating and Chasing Amy, a lot
yeah,
of it is based on. So I think that was such a huge growth spurt for him and his life, I think, of when are you going to have that where you're just this kid from New Jersey and now you're thrust into LA as a filmmaker, doing
yeah,
studio films, dating an actress, and then meeting like, people who are doing cocaine and smoking pot and he'd never been around it. And, just a whole nother world. Like that was just such a time in his life. Like I don't think he could ever, do you understand what I'm saying? Like
of
he'll never be
course,
that.
yeah.
There's another, you're young and like you only get moments like that once, I think.
I will get shot if we don't talk about Greedy People. I see we've got about 10 minutes left, and I've been lucky enough to see the film. It's due out in the UK, but we've obviously got a screener sent to us. I
Yeah.
absolutely loved it. I've not seen a great kind of black comedy for a long time, and the first thing I thought of when it finished was it gave me elements of kind of Fargo. That gave me that kind of
Yeah.
feel. And I thought all the performances were brilliant, and I wondered how this film came about for you with such a great cast, such a great director, and just such a great film.
I know it really is. it's so funny because it's just like, I think like a lot of stories in Hollywood, but like it started over 10 years ago. I got a call to go do a pilot in Nashville with Billy Ray Cyrus, from this unknown director. Um, and I was like, I like Nashville. Billy Ray Cyrus could be interesting. It was kind of a character role, which, is I don't get to play often. Um, and so I went and did it. And, it's like 5 days I went and shot and then like came back home, never heard anything. And then honestly, it was like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years later, I get a call that the show's been picked up. And I'm like, what? What show?
I
Oh,
forgot
I
about that.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Potsy flew out with Travis, and they were just so eager and like earnest and just like, I mean, they had done like videos and very creative, people, but it was like they're going to do their first series. And I was kind of like, okay, but I want to talk about like my role and what are we doing? And I just like them. So have you talked to Potsy yet? Have
Nope,
you got to meet him?
not yet.
You will. He is one of the nicest people in the industry. And when you say that, it always sounds like, well, then they're not talented if they're nice. But it's like he is both extremely talented and the nicest guy in the world. And like his sets are like, he never gets stressed. He never loses his temper. He never yells. It's just fun and easy. And, that's top down. Like the director sets the tone. But we ended up doing two seasons of this Still the King show in Nashville and just had a blast doing it. He let me direct two in the second season because he
How
believed in me
cool
as a
is that?
director. Like he's just such a nice guy and we had so much fun. But I was always like, it was me. My character was kind of like the heart, and me surrounded by like wacky characters. And we always joke, I was like, Patsy, I want to be the wacky character. Like, I don't want to be like the straight person to John's jokes and his craziness. And so at one point, like, I don't know, after that series, he was in LA and he's like, I want to do this truck stop show. And you could be like an ex-truck driver that now manages this truck stop. And I was like, can I, like, it can be a character, like, can I work perm and like smoke and be, and he's like, yes, it would be a total character. And then that never went. And so then he called me one day and he's like, okay, remember that character we talked about in the truck stop? I have something similar. And I was like, can I have fun with it? And he's like, absolutely. And I was like, I don't need to read the script. Like, I will come work with you any day. And got there and like, and he let me go with that part. Like, I ad-libbed quite a bit in that in that
What
first
looked
scene,
really
especially.
great is you just look like you're having fun. You can
I was
just tell.
having, but that's Potsy. Yeah, it's Potsy, and I trust him. Like when you trust the director you're working with, it's
Yeah.
so easy. But he also just like he just let me go and do my thing. And even like we did the first scene, and so I was gonna come back like at the end of the shoot to do the last scene, and I was like, so you think you know Babette? And I was like, but what if? Because this was right when like Roe versus Wade was overturned. I was like, she has a T-shirt that's like pro-choice
Yeah.
because you think she's this redneck. And so when I showed up to shoot again, he and the wardrobe girl had come up with the coolest fucking T-shirt for me to wear, and it's like like a uterus with a fuck you sign.
Amazing. I want one.
Yeah, yeah. I know. It's pretty great.
That's amazing. And the cast itself and everything, I really hope this film kind of gets a lot of people's attention. It's like sometimes these films go under the radar, but I've seen a lot of reviews already and they're really glowing. A lot of people are saying how great all
Yeah,
the performances are. So,
yeah. I mean, the writer was great, the script was great. And again, like Potsy's just an excellent director. Like he really understands comedy. He
yeah.
truly does. The fine line of it. It's never like it can be broad, but still like he can do it all. He can do broad, crazy, stupid comedy. He can do very subtle comedy, and he has a real gift of kind of marrying those two. He's very talented, and yeah, I mean Joseph was so much fun to work with. All of them, everyone was great.
Joseph just seems like, obviously I've watched a lot of his work with The Dark Knight Rises, and 500 Days of Summer and stuff like that, and he's just someone I want to have a beer with and just sit down and chat with him all night. Like, he just
I
seems
think he
like a
would.
lovely soul.
He's like a family guy, which is crazy because he's a kid actor, and usually they're those,
Yeah,
they can be kind of up. But he is just such a normal, nice, easygoing family guy that yeah, you can just have a beer with and talk about normal stuff.
that's amazing. And what's the next kind of 6 to 12 months like for you? You've talked a couple of times today about directing. Is that something you really want to keep on going with? Is there features
I would
ahead?
love to. It's just so hard. I have a script, and you kind of like, I really, really, really like it. And I've kind of like, you just have to wait for I guess the right iteration of it to come along. Like you send it out and it doesn't really kind of, take.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm about to like send it out again. I just saw Ron Perlman recently, and I was like, he would be really great for one of the roles. And it's like, it's just figuring out the pieces. But I will again. I hope. I hope. It's tough. I mean, it's like look at Patsy and like his first film, O. Henry,
Yeah.
amazing. And like this film's amazing, but will it's the market is so crowded. There's so much content now. Chasing Amy wouldn't have been what it was
No.
if it were to come out today. Do you know?
The
It's
world,
just
it's like
changed.
the attention span of people as well. People just want it now, and
Yeah,
then they'll forget about it and move on if they don't like it. Or like music, everything's so disposable. Like Days to
it is.
Confuse,
It
Chasing
is.
Amy, none of those films, Morats would even get a cinema release now.
No.
You know.
And I remember like there was like so many double features of like Chasing Amy and Swingers, and also like when I was little, like you'd go to the movie theater all summer and see some film like 6 times. Like they just don't. I remember like what was the movie about Kim Jong Un?
Oh,
And they
oh,
like went over, but it ended up causing
yeah,
um like a cyber world war, and like Obama was talking about it, and it was just like all this craziness, and then like in 3 weeks it was over and no one was even talking about it, and I was like, that's when I knew like everything has changed, like nothing will ever be kind of in the zeitgeist for months.
I've got time for one more question, and what I do on this podcast, I ask it to absolutely everybody. You get to choose the final piece of music that's played. So after our interview is all done today, Joey, I will edit it. I'll make it sound really nice, and a song is played, and you get to choose any song in the world that means a lot to you to make it as original as I can. So after that's all done, what would you love to be played? What's the song that came to your heart when I asked the question?
Tell it to you, it's a song called Arkansas. um
This is going to be a song I think I've never heard before, which I always love because it means I
yeah,
then
let
discover
me,
something
can I
new.
look for that and I'll find it for you. Okay, it's called Arkansas is Nice
And
by
who's
Bailey Bigger.
okay? And why was that song the one that came to you before any other?
I think just because I'm like, I feel like I just moved home to Arkansas 2.5 years ago, and my
Okay.
life has just gotten like dramatically richer, I think. Um, and so I'm just in a really good place, and that song just kind of sums that up.
Thank you for your time today. It really means a lot. I would love you to come back on. Half an hour for me is scratching the surface. I've had Kevin, I've had Jason.
Yeah,
Everyone's
let's do
been back
that.
on. You know.
I would love to.
Good luck with everything. Thank you, and I will speak to you soon. So there it is. There's my interview with me and Joey Lauren Adams. I can now say another name has been ticked off this incredible View Askew list. You heard today we also talked about her brand new film, which is called Greedy People. It's available on digital platforms on the 23rd of September, and it's distributed by Signature Entertainment. I've been lucky enough to see an advanced screening of this film. It's brilliant, her performance is so good, and I urge you all to go and check it out. Also, we talked about her legendary performance in Dazed and Confused, one of my favourite films growing up, and again, an amazing performance. But the good news is, because these interviews are quite short when it comes to doing press runs, I'm always grateful for the time that I get with the guests. Me and Joey have been speaking over email, and she's going to be coming back on the podcast within the next couple of months. An extended episode, and I can't wait to share that one with you as soon as it's done. Also today, if you've enjoyed today's episode, guys, please share this. The Kevin Smith community is huge. I know how much everyone always loves to celebrate anything View Askew, so if you're listening to this, please take the time to share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or whatever you use to tell people about podcasts. It goes a massive way and costs literally nothing to do. It's just a click of a couple of buttons. I also do have a Patreon account. I can't keep the lights on for this podcast without it. Basically, each and every month, if you go on to the link on markandme.com and subscribe to Patreon, you get a welcome pack that includes a sticker, a badge, a monthly newsletter, and exclusive episodes that are called the Lost Tapes that are only available to people that subscribe via Patreon. They're never going to be available to anyone outside of Patreon. They're just for you to say thanks for supporting me. And just before I go, let's give a shout out to the sponsor of the podcast, Richer Sounds. If you're in the market for anything to do with TV, video, audio, hit up richersounds.com or visit any of their stores. They are the best out there and they support me each and every month. Right, if you're a brand new listener to Mark and Me, welcome aboard. I hope you dip back in and listen to loads of previous interviews with not just View Askew guests, but actors, directors, and all different people from all different walks of life. There's over 370 episodes, they're all free, and I hope you find something that you love from any of those episodes. Right, it's time for me to go, and I'll be back in a few days with another brand new episode. So until then, look after yourself, take care, and I'll speak to you all very soon.
Song